little nervous to share this. This is actually something that wrote, not roped. I did not rope this. I wrote this for my new book titled Love, period, on purpose. And it's about sex. Before I get into this, just want to remind you let me leak something because I'm super excited about it. The Single on Purpose app, if you're sick of swiping and you want to rebuild yourself with like minded people, they're building it fast. It'll be ready like in a month. And so I don't know when you hear this, but when you do, by the time you hear this, maybe it'll only be a few weeks away. But please look out for it. I will blast it all over my Instagram at the Angry Therapist. And it's going to be like minded people who want to work on themselves first. And of course, if you have a sea of like minded singles, there's going to be connection. So, yes, love can happen, but this isn't a swiping app. This is a technically a self betterment app for single people. And also, we're going to have live meetups. We're going to use my retreat house as a tree house. And I'm going to have leaders in there organizing groups. So you can not only engage with like minded singles, but also hang out with them. So, anyway, okay, there's a fine line between revolution and evolution. My sex story. My brother and I got circumcised late. I was 10 and my brother was 12. We noticed we were different, and different wasn't good when you're the only Korean boy or Korean boys for blocks. We just wanted to fit in. I don't even remember telling our parents. All I remember was squinting from the bright lights in the examination room while the male Korean doctor told the female nurse to notice how my foreskin was a lot looser than my brother's. It was the first revelation that I may be hypersexual. I thought my brother masturbated as much as I did. So in the 80s, porn was something you had to score. You had to know someone, you had to steal it from an older brother or dad. Um, we would collect images torn from various quote unquote nudie mags and keep them in our back pockets until we could tell, well, until we couldn't tell what we were looking at. I guess my mom never checked my pockets when doing my laundry. A few of the kids even had full magazines stashed under their beds, and we would flip through them with flashlights under their blankets during sleepovers. By the time I was 12, my curiosity grew so strong that I cut a hole in a plum. I had sex with a plum when I was 12. I thought it was the closest thing to sex that I could recreate. And I wouldn't actually have sex until I was 17, a bit of a late bloomer. This is the theme of my story, if you don't know. She was a female friend who confused or who confessed her crush for me. I didn't feel the same way. And then one Sunday, she asked me to bring her milk for the 100 plus cookies she needed to bake for the drill team the next morning. And of course, as her friend, I said, sure, no problem. And when I went over there, um, she basically jumped my bones. And I know that's a very outdated term, jumping someone's bones. I think, speaking of the 80s, I think that's an 80s term. Um, and of course, I was going to let it happen because not only was I curious, but it was so convenient. I mean, I was 17-year-old boy bouncing off, off the walls. It was fast and awkward, like everyone's first time. But that night, I crossed the great divide. I went from curious boy to a confused teenager. The experience wasn't what I imagined. I was determined to match the fantasy I had in my head. But it would be many, many years later before I would be able to explore sex in a way that wasn't performance based or me getting something instead of connecting with someone. In my early 30s, my wife found a QuickTime porn video on my desktop. One video, by the way, maybe like a minute. It was like one of those torn magazines, images I had in my back pocket in my wonder years. Um, she grew up Christian and her views were very conservative. So finding this was like her walking in on me, cheating on her. She was devastated, felt betrayed. And suddenly I'm sitting in a circle of men in a sex and love anonymous meeting, wondering if I was a sex addict. I wanted to be a good husband. I didn't want to lose my wife. I didn't realize it at the time, but her reaction was about more than finding a video. She wasn't happy in the marriage. There was a lot of resentment, anger. She suppressed her feelings. I had no idea. The video was just kind of like a relief valve, right? It was an excuse for her to basically collapse the marriage, or at least collapse the first domino, which eventually led to my divorce. And since the divorce, I experienced all kinds of sex, from long distance relationships where sex was a box to check to fleeting summer flings that lingered in your mind forever. I've been with conservative partners who saw it as an obligation and chore, to others whose libidos matched mine, teaching me about kink and a darker side to the erotic, giving me permission to explore my fantasies and desires, which made me feel less alone and more human. Sex has always been central in my life, something I've placed a lot of weight on when it comes to love and relationships. And for a long time, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was possibly an addict. I've always carried shame when it came to sex. And I believed it was tied to my childhood. If you know my story, my parents were never home. I didn't get a lot of what I call emotional milk. I don't believe that I was abused in any way. Although that's actually that could have happened. I might have suppressed it because since I was 3 when we came to America, my parents always worked and left us with random babysitters and neighbors. But I've always gravitated toward sex, and maybe part of it is being exposed to early images that I wasn't ready for as a 10-year-old. But maybe it was a way to numb or cope with something deeper. Anyway, I covered it with shame, internalizing the idea that I was a predator or a pervert, maybe possibly an addict, because addiction runs in my blood. But now, today, as a 51-year-old man who is still seeking and exploring and learning and growing, I'm beginning to see my desire not as something to fear, but a part of my evolution, not a revolution. Today, I'm learning to co create sex and intimacy, something I've never done before. For me, sex has always been something given or taken, rarely discussed or processed with honesty. And looking back, I'm still not sure how much of the intimacy in my relationships came from a genuine desire and connection, and how much was driven by obligation or even addiction. Co creating changes all of that. It wipes the slate clean and gives both people a voice, allowing them to redefine what sex and intimacy means, creating something new, real, and honest, but most importantly, together. What is co creating sexual intimacy? Co creating sex and intimacy is about actively involving both partners in shaping the intimacy container, making sure it's built on mutual desire, trust, and open expression and communication. Instead of sex being lined with shame or something that's expected, it's a shared intentional experience where we express our needs, boundaries, and desires. This space allows people to feel seen, heard, and valued. In order to co create, we must break free from societal pressures and norms, old definitions, and what's been passed down, locker rooms and staged porn, and align with our authentic selves as we engage in ongoing conversations about what feels good and what we truly desire. Co creating sex and intimacy means to continue to explore our own relationship with self and desire, to feed, to grow, to nurture, because it's a living, breathing thing, not something that's set in stone, because our definitions and what we want changes as we change. What does co-creating sexual intimacy look like in everyday life? Well, here's some examples of how you can co-create sexual intimacy with your partner, as well as steps to make it a part of your everyday relationship. All right, one, open communication and open communication about desires and boundaries. One of the biggest barriers to healthy sexual intimacy is a lack of communication about what each person really wants or doesn't want. Talking openly and honestly about sex is something we haven't been encouraged to do. There's shame and fear in what our partner would think if we were honest, right? So it's going to require a lot of reps. It's going to require practice. And I would say more difficult for women, although this isn't really a gender thing, but because of society and how um, I think when women are younger, especially, they've been programmed because of the world that we live in to please their partners more than explore self, And so a lot of women, I would say in their 20s, sex was a lot of giving, not a lot of taking. I also don't think sex is about taking. I think it's about sharing, right? And I think because of porn and locker rooms, men saw sex as um, domination. Men saw sex as a way to let out aggression. Men saw sex as performance. I know I have. And so until men turn the corner and start redefining all definitions in their life, all parts of their lives, including sex, um, we can kind of make sex about the scoreboard, you know? And so it's important to talk openly and kind of redefine what sex looks like for you. If not, we'll just kind of default to those old models, those containers that society and locker rooms and porn have created, right? That are so easily to fall into. Co creating intimacy means regularly checking in about your desires, what excites you, and what might feel off limits at the moment. These conversations shouldn't just happen when there's a problem. We have to make talking about sex a normal, ongoing part of our relationship. So here's a practical example. Set aside time to talk about your sex life outside of the bedroom. This might look like grabbing coffee on a Saturday morning and discussing what you've been enjoying lately or things you'd like to try, dreams and desires you've been having. It can be lighthearted or exploratory. I've been thinking we could try something new, right? Or what do you think about this? Or how do you feel about the way things are right now? Is there anything you'd like more of or less of or different? So, why does this matter? When we make sexual communication a regular part of our relationship, it removes the taboo and makes it easier to talk about what's working or not working. It also ensures that both partners feel heard and valued, building trust and creating a deeper connection, which equals ultimately better sex and intimacy. All right, number two, prioritize mutual pleasure over performance. Many of us focus on quote unquote the finish or worrying about whether we're satisfying our partner in a certain way. We put a lot of weight on orgasms, and I'm very guilty for this. If our partner has one, it means that we're a good lover, right? And if they don't, that means that we're inadequate or something's wrong with us. Co creating intimacy means letting go of these pressures and instead focusing on mutual pleasure and connection. I think the key word is connection, right? It's about tuning in to each other's hearts, souls, and bodies, the erotic, whatever that means or looks like for each of you, and creating a shared experience that isn't judged or labeled. All right, practical example. Before you have sex, set an intention that focuses on enjoyment rather than a specific goal, like an orgasm. This might sound like, let's focus on having fun together and see where it goes. Or take time to explore each other's bodies, share what feels good, and pay attention to your partner's cues. Maybe this leads to something more, maybe it doesn't. But the key is to create an environment where you both are present and relaxed. So, why does this matter? When we let go of performance pressure and only pleasuring our partner, it opens the door to more authentic and enjoyable sexual experiences. By focusing on pleasure rather than a checklist, we reduce anxiety and make space for intimacy that feels natural and connected. Practice consent and check-ins. This is number three. Co-creating intimacy means that consent is an ongoing dynamic process. This isn't just about giving a yes or a no, but rather checking in with each other throughout the experience. Consent should feel like a dialogue where both partners are attentive to each other's boundaries and willing to adapt. I'm really bad at this. It's something I've been, or actually, I've never really practiced. It's something that I am trying to practice now, and it's hard because I forget. But I also know that my partner really values it if I ask for permission. And even if there are things that you don't feel like you have to ask permission for because you've been in a relationship for 6 years or because it's just kind of common, um, make it a challenge to you. See if you can do that. And I guarantee you, your partner will appreciate it. And it's not something that you have to ask every day for, right? You don't want to make it something that gives you anxiety, but just once in a while, hey, can I do this to you? Can I touch you here? Just creating that dialogue really makes someone feel safe and respected. Here's a practical example. During sex, regularly ask your partner how they're feeling. Hey, is that okay? Is this okay? Do you want me to keep going? These small check-ins show that you care about your comfort, about their comfort and enjoyment. It can also be as simple as reading body language and pausing if something seems off, right? Why it matters. Ongoing consent creates a safe space where both partners feel empowered to express their boundaries and desires without fear of judgment. This builds trust and ensures that sexual intimacy remains a positive experience for both people. Without ongoing consent, we can start to compromise self, which leads to resentment and, of course, disconnection. And next one, adapt to change. Adapt to changing needs and desires. So as life changes, so do sexual needs and desires. Co-creating intimacy means adapting to those changes together. And this might mean navigating differences in libido, working through physical changes like pregnancy, obviously, but also just like life transitions. If you're moving, if you're in a depression, if your partner's, switching careers, any kind of big life transition is going to ripple into the bedroom, right? So simply recognize that what used to be exciting may not be anymore, and that's okay. And the key is to stay flexible and open and curious and always willing to adjust to what works for both of you. Practical example: if one person's libido is lower than the others, create space for intimacy that doesn't have to lead to sex. This can involve cuddling, kissing, or physical touch without the pressure to quote unquote perform. You might say, I know you're not feeling it for sex, but I'd love to hold you tonight, or let's be close in whatever way that feels comfortable for you. Now, I'll be honest, this is really difficult for me. I want to get here and I'm still working on it. I've always seen sex as something you start and finish. There's a beginning and an end. And if there is no end, then I don't want a beginning, right? But this mindset and practice has led to a very narrow definitions of sex and sometimes strips intimacy. It's easy to make it about you instead of us. At 51, I am finally learning to practice sex and intimacy as a space, an exploratory space without finish lines. It's not a race, it's a canvas, both people painting a new one each time. That's its own art and not tied to anything else. So, why it matters? Adaptability and sexual intimacy allows both partners to feel seen and respected, even when desires don't always match. By staying flexible, you show that the relationship is built on more than just sex. It's about connection, closeness, and mutual understanding. Okay, the last one: schedule intimacy time without making it a chore. Busy schedules, kids, and the daily grind can make it hard to prioritize sex, even when both partners want it. Intimacy can become extra, or if we have time for it, as daily tasks pile up. Co creating intimacy means being intentional about making time for each other, even if that means scheduling it. But here's the catch: this doesn't have to feel like a chore. It's about carving out time for connection, whatever that looks like. So, my partner and I do sometimes, or actually no, my partner and I do something that I've always told myself I would never do. Being in a hopeless romantic, I said I would never schedule sex. I found that idea mechanical and forced. But now with a 4.5-year old, scheduling sex is how we get it in. It is I wanted to say pun intended so bad, but I'm trying to stay away from the low hanging fruit. I'm trying to stay away from that's what she said jokes. I still have that tug, but I'm trying to not do that. Sorry. Okay, if it's not on our shared calendar, it just doesn't happen, and that's just life, right? And I've accepted that. But it doesn't mean the quote unquote afternoon delight has to be mechanical or forced. I actually see it on the calendar and I look forward to it. It gives me time to set the intention. So, practical example, set a date night that's just for the two of you, where the focus is a connection rather than pressure to have sex. Maybe you cook dinner together, take a bath, go on a motorcycle ride. That's my favorite. Or spend time talking and cuddling. Allow intimacy to build naturally from the exchange. Okay, why does that matter? Let's face it, life gets busy very fast. If you don't intentionally make time for each other, intimacy can fall by the wayside. Wayside. I just had a revelation. I thought it was all this time, I thought it was waste side, like waste, like it's trash. It's wayside. Sorry. By scheduling time for connection, you prioritize your relationship even in the middle of a hectic life. This keeps the coal in the fire and the connection strong. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. Um, co-creating is all about both people having conversations about what they want to build, how they want to build it, and not building love or relationships based on someone else's truth. And that may be friends, it may be, your grandparents or your parents. There are so many influences we have in our life, and a lot of them we're not even aware of because they kind of seep into our unconscious. So, intentionally co creating means to create a relationship that is honest to both of you, right? That's basically it. And anything's possible, right? You create any kind of relationship you want, whether it's monogamy, open, poly, like it doesn't matter what it looks like anymore. Uh, and yeah, you might get some judgment, but that judgment is evolving very fast because I think we live in a time where we know that old blueprints don't work anymore. So we live in a time where it's all about customization, and I don't think that love and relationships are any different. That being said, I do think love and relationships, also marriage, it's like it's in a glass box still, right? Lots of judgment if we break that glass box or create something that's unique and different from our neighbor. But life is short. We only live once, and the last time it didn't work. So co-create your sex and intimacy. Thank you for listening. And final reminder: check out my Instagram at the Angry Therapist for all updates. Single on Purpose, the app is coming. It's coming very soon. I haven't been this excited about a product in a long time. Finally, an app to connect like-minded singles and help them connect to themselves first. So if you're sick of swiping, hang out with us. We're going to do a lot of in-person stuff as well. Thank you for listening. Be well.